and we have Eris and Julie on the line.
Yep.
Hi, guys.
So now, I think the purpose of this closed session was to debrief what happened earlier.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, I think Eris probably has a list, pending next steps, Eris probably has a list of things you need, right, Eris? If the board decides to take that next step, so.
Yeah, I mean, really the key thing would be, we just need to talk about what the minimum bid ought to be. That'll be the key question to put into the document.
I think that, and I know there was other questions that were brought up too, like what's our timeline on something like this too? Because we had originally talked about terms and conditions being something we were gonna be approving as of the next meeting. And I think I want to know from the group, is that how we still feel? So.
At the next one, meeting 2 weeks from now? That we'd be approving
Terms and conditions, so that we could move forward with a sealed bid process, if that's my understanding.
I'm still in favor of moving forward with the timeline that we talked about. I think the question is more about what happens in the public forum and what happens in the closed session, and how do we bridge that gap?
Right. Right, so how do we have an organic conversation that's in open meeting, that's a dialogue, that's helpful and beneficial to the community, doesn't put us in any jeopardy when we're talking about a potential sale, also allows for feedback from the community. So how do we get to that point? Like, I think that feels a little bit to me like an unknown territory.
Well, is setting the minimum price, I mean, gosh, maybe I'm totally wrong, but wouldn't we have to decide that in closed session so as to not taint the whole exercise? Or am I guess we don't know what can happen in closed. Can there ever be a vote in closed when it's something like this? Like, i.e. taking action or not?
Well, I can answer that question. So I would recommend, if we're going to talk about setting the minimum bid, that ought to be a closed session discussion. The board won't be voting on it. It's just a sense of the board in terms of what the number ought to be. The vote will happen in open session, either at the meeting on the 19th, or if you move it to January to approve at the January meeting. That's where it actually becomes an act of the board to decide to sell the property via this process. So, and the other stuff, talking about things in closed session is an exception to the general principle that the public's business should be done in open session. So you can sort of err more towards open session discussions on a lot of the other topics. If you felt you got some feedback from the community that they want more information, you can talk about this more in open session if you want. There's no prohibition on it, other than I think just it would be unwise to talk about sort of, we won't take a number less than in public. You know what I'm saying? Or we'd be happy with X, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Because this is there's a lot of privacy and confidentiality around a sizable real estate potential.
Absolutely.
Sizable real estate transaction like this. Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
I apologize because I wasn't here at the last meeting, but maybe I know it would be helpful for me, maybe some of you guys too. Can we back up? Have we backed up into some sort of timeline to say, like, if we want to get the seal bids done by X? So what's that seal bids done by? Like, what's that date? What's that timeline? Because I didn't see it I didn't see firm dates in the document.
The marketing plan.
Yeah, let me pull that up just so I don't.
We were looking at like March-ish, April, right? We were backing out of.
I think Eric talked us through a timeline.
Yeah, I can do that, Brian. I mean, what we talked about is if the board were to approve on the 19th, Brian Stashak could publish on the 27th of December, the 3rd of January, the 10th of January. We could do a bid opening on the 16th and 17th, and then approve the winning bidder on January 23rd. That would all fit between the 19th of December and the 23rd of January. That's what we talked about at the last conversation.
And then, if we were to approve it by January 23rd, is our time-sensitive stuff done at that point? Then it becomes a zoning issue and everything that ensues? Like, at that point...
At that point, yeah, the buyer is really interfacing with... You guys will still be doing things. I mean, you'll be providing them with information, giving them access to the property, et cetera. But it would really be the buyer, the contract purchaser, going through the process, meeting with the planning department at the village, getting a feedback from them, and, at some point they would have to give notice to people who live within, say, 500 feet of the property, and they would have plan commission meetings and then a village board meeting, things like that, to approve it.
And so if it all falls apart after in any of those steps, it's not on us, and there's nothing on us.
Right.
And then at that point, if it does fall apart, then what do we do? Like, do we decide to go into
Future decisions, right? Like you could decide to reduce the price or to sell it as it's currently zoned, because more than likely the issue would be zoning.
Right.
So the board could say we're going to sell it as it currently is zoned, which is probably going to mean a much lower price.
Right.
The reason I'm asking this is because there was some timeline associated with our previous discussions about wanting to do this before the new board is seated. And so I'm wondering, do we have any flex time in that? Because right now we're up against 2 weeks from now, where we'd have to put this to a decision, which if community engagement and hosting a community forum or something like that is important to all of us, we really have no more time with that.
Right.
So if that is all important to us and we ended up pushing it back by X amount of weeks or whatever, I'm trying to figure out what that does to the process. Where's
Yeah,
that
because
from?
I feel like it is. I feel like if we come out with a vote on the terms and conditions and stuff in 2 weeks, I do think we're rushing through this, and we're not, and yet we are. I mean, to the public side, possibly, that we are rushing. It's just my flavor, but I didn't know if there's a reason that we're really trying to get this done on 12/19. Is there, if we push this to early January, is that troublesome in our timing?
Well, let's let's talk about that. So January 23, if the terms and conditions were approved and the resolution was adopted, that would be January 30th. Let me look at my calendar. February.
Yeah, you could publish, Brian. So the board, the 23rd is a Monday. So let's say Brian Stashak then published on the 26th of January, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, but then say February 3rd, February 10th.
Yep.
You did a bid opening on, say, February 15th. And then you had your next February meeting. I'm not sure when that is, but it would be sometime after the 15th, I'm guessing.
February 21st is the regular.
21st, yeah, that would work. So, given that the board meets once a month, and obviously you could call a special meeting too if you decided that, hey, we don't want to be wedded to, this third, whatever your schedule is here. You could do something differently. You have your committee of the whole meetings too to work with, so you've got flexibility. There's nothing magical about December 19th,
I feel like when we last
January
talked.
9th.
Oh, go ahead.
Even if we did January 9th or the committee of the whole.
Oh, to do terms and conditions. Excuse me.
We
Give
should
it a
have
little
a
bit.
public forum. I don't know if we reschedule that. It would probably have to be.
I'm not sure that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You guys get
It
back?
would be really nice to.
We get back on January 9th. We have a board meeting that night too.
Excuse me.
Oh, and then
Yeah, we.
Before.
Julie, did you have something? to
Yeah,
add?
I'll work that week.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I was just trying to kind of reflect. I think when we met, I think it was probably for 2 hours last time. in closed session. I think there was, we talked a lot of, we talked about a lot of things, and I think that such the focus was on getting that initial communication out. I think we should recognize, like, again, congrats to assembling that so quickly, and I think getting a successful communication out. We probably focused less as a group, at least, on once the communication's out, what kind of community input are we expecting? And again, it's this tricky thing that this has been out here for us for coming up on a year. I mean, we're getting close, not quite a year, I guess 9 months or whatever it is, yet it's very new to the community. So I think totally trying to balance and appreciate that it's new to them, but also trying to balance, like, every day that a little bit of me is like, every day that we wait, the market could totally change and we might not have any buyers. Now, it's not, that's a little dramatic, but there is, at least one bidder out there who's sort of been out there a while. So anyway, I think we should focus on what does this group really want from a community input, and I think we should evaluate, if there's time tonight to evaluate whether it's a forum or whether it's something else. I'd like to not see those dates slip, because I do feel like we are at risk of, like, well, we did one forum but only 10 people came, so we should do another. Like, This could just kind of quickly get pushed out into the realm of, call it May or June. And again, I'm a little dramatic with that, but maybe we should talk about what we expect, and if, also kind of, I'm a scenario planner, like, if there's a lot of, if the people have more time to think about it, who tend to be more vocal or more negative, and they show up and they're super negative, now we've gathered the input, but now if we act differently than the majority of the input that we gathered in any sort of way, are we still comfortable moving forward? I don't want to say careful what we ask for, but I think we should be thoughtful about how we go about getting community input so that we can still, make sure either, representative voices are heard, or if we're hearing from and I'm just guessing, like a small vocal, maybe the local residents all come, but a lot of other people don't come, and it's really, really negative. How do we as a board kind of power through that, or pivot away from this? And, so anyway, just scenario planning, and I think the focus should be on how we're getting community input in addition to the format that's already out there, which is the electronic kind of non-public format.
I think I would have said the same thing, Julie, that I wanted to make sure that I understood why we wanted, what we want to get out of that community input. And also realize that at the end of the day, what we did say when we even thought we'd entertain this idea, is that the goal from this board was to maximize the best outcome for this district. So keeping that in mind, we have to understand, time is a factor. It could potentially affect perhaps our asking price or what we could get for it, and our opportunities. And I think, at least I know I would have expected that if we dropped this bomb, so to speak, we would have had a little bit bigger of a ripple effect. And I don't think we've had as much that I would have expected. Now, whether or not people are paying attention is totally on the radar. How much of that is really our responsibility? I mean, I think, we have a responsibility. We will do diligence on that. But I think we should be I think we should remain focused on why we wanted to do this in the first place, what we think that we were going to get, what was going to be the greater good that was going to come out of all of this. And so I think that being said, I think there's some appreciation in allowing for some time. This is my personal, I'm talking just personally, we can discuss this, but I think I like the idea of allowing for maybe a little bit more time to add to this for us, and to be able to see if there's any other information that comes in through the community. We did talk about putting out a video potentially. Maybe that's something else that we would do, before the holiday break. I could certainly help do that.
What would the video be like?
Basically, I think probably just talking about the pluses to us being able to purchase, have the property purchased and what, not what we would do with it, but I mean, well, in very, very broad sense,
Yeah.
because there's really no way for us to get to that point until we've done a much bigger assessment of what needs to be done. Not to mention the fact that a lot of this stuff is still kind of intangible until we actually have dollars and go through the whole process.
But I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of a video and us talking about what we're going to do with it because we haven't talked as a board yet in front of the public.
Sure.
So it's like that, for me, that's the linchpin.
Yeah.
There's two,
Right.
there's two. So I'm looking at the calendar right now, and our next committee of the whole meeting is the 9th of January. What if we had an open board discussion about the opportunities that selling this property could create? And entertain the positives and any negatives, considerations, whatever, on the 9th. And then previous to listening to you, Carrie and Julie, I was thinking, well, maybe we could do if we want to do a forum, maybe we could do a forum either that week or better yet, the following week, the week before our board meeting. But I hear Julie loud and clear about, yeah, be careful what you ask for, and I hear the concerns with that too. But I'm wavering on that. However, to me, the 9th seems like it would be the appropriate time to have a board discussion in public about why we're considering this and what we think the positives are. That's my sense.
Well, I mean, I'm wavering on like the forum part because I don't know now like how much more we can provide to the public to provide in the forum. I think once it's determined or once it's known who the potential buyers are is when there may be more community comments or interest in what is happening, because right now people don't know what the potential buyers could be.
Right.
And so that I think is partially like what can we now present in a forum? Like what more can we provide in a forum that we haven't, that we would jeopardize if we were to have that?
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm wavering about that too. I'm wavering because I see the purpose of a forum is just one more vehicle for people to come and express their concerns. But I think the website and us potentially having the meeting and the conversation on the 9th kind of checks that box.
Because they're going to come and talk then if they want to.
Yeah.
You mean having it as an agenda item so that they can just come and have their say?
Which is good because in a forum, it's not really that great of an idea if we want to. We don't want to have a open discussion and dialogue because that could lead to trouble in a lot of ways. But we have been. We started this board saying that we want to be as transparent and communicative as possible, and so at least the January 9th would offer the opportunity for people to hear and talk.
Well, and they'll have I think I like where you guys are going. I mean, people have the ability to come and speak, and they had it tonight, and they'll have it 2 weeks from tonight. And if we delay this whole process by about a month, they'll have it again on the 9th, and they'll have it again in January. And frankly, they'll have it every other week for eternity, literally. But I think it does look a little rushed if we kind of jump on and approve and move forward right ahead of the holidays, and that might catch people off guard. But if there's a way to just, that's why you've got it there, right? And it's 3 minutes and they can share. And if there's 50 people who come from the local area and all want to talk, maybe we consider not limiting them. And yeah, I think I'm warming up to delaying for a month and then allowing and encouraging the public comment. I don't know. I thought tonight was us kind of talking about it. Again, to someone's point, I don't know what new information we'd have as we had more of a discussion, unless it was like expanding on parts of the press release of like where we might be able to allocate what might be some of the top areas to allocate funds if this were to transact, but I don't know that there will be a lot of new information.
That's true.
I think it's also like some of that conversation that we've had, asking questions, you know, just bringing that to the forefront, like making it clear we are selling, but we don't get to make all the decisions after that, right? That would be the village, you know, just some of those conversations that feel kind of benign and just we were asking it among ourselves that we could ask, you know, in front of everybody else. But there are not many. I mean, because everything is out there. And I think
I guess, yeah.
I was just to say, I think the point that Dawn made, and this was really the only thing we talked about last time, it was just trying to get this through to a certain point before there is turnover on the board. And this doesn't sound like this jeopardizes that at all, just to try to keep some momentum.
Jill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the first question, like just to kind of maybe bring us all back together, one, do we want a forum, and what would be the purpose of the forum? Because I feel like we've had a lot of opportunity for people. I feel like this is the most organized manner you could have with anyone to ask a question, raise a concern, give approval, that we've had this. I mean, it was really well planned out and we have the website for information. And pretty much people have been silent, aside from the one person that came tonight. But pretty much people have given approval or have been silent. Mm-hmm. So what would we achieve at a forum? And what do we achieve by waiting longer? Except for the risk of, you know, maybe losing somebody, maybe having, you know, appraisals change, those kind of things. So what are we hoping to achieve to go longer that we haven't already achieved?
To go longer or to have a forum?
No, one, to have a forum and to push it out to January 9th, to go deviate from our original plan. What are we going to accomplish with that change?
Yeah.
So instead of making a vote on the 19th, making a vote on the 23rd.
What if we...
No,
and we
making a
couldn't
vote
take
on this in December.
On the 9th or,
To go
I
to
think
vote.
we could take a vote on the 9th.
Well, first of all, my question
We've done that
Yeah,
before.
we typically don't, but we have before. So I mean,
But why wouldn't we just, I guess the first question is, why wouldn't we do it at the next meeting?
At the 19th?
I can just speak from my perspective, because we haven't discussed it as a board. We just, tonight
We can discuss it as a board at the next meeting and then take a vote.
Well, but
It doesn't allow time for, right now,
what,
it's been released that we're thinking about it. That could change the community conversation if we sit as a board and talk about, ultimately, people I think would walk away from that meeting understanding if the board is in favor of selling it and is going to do it. And it might
But
change.
I think, okay, so but we could take a vote on that, and they could come and say, it's gonna be on the agenda that we're gonna be discussing it, and whether or not we want to take a vote on it, and that could bring the people to come to the meeting beforehand, you know, to speak there.
It just feels to me it feels very rushed, and I'm not sure that delaying it to after the holidays, allowing a little more time for people to get on the website. People are distracted right now with the holidays. Taking it, you know, into January, I'm not sure. I think that gives us the benefit of being more transparent, more open, more approachable. And I don't see how it harms us.
Well, I think that I think what Erica's saying, or you've said, is that what we have discussed this as a board, and we've discussed it in closed session, and those are discussions that the board can have.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily like it's like that we're not being transparent with people. Like those kinds of discussions are the discussions that the board can have in closed. So we're full aware, but yes, it was announced to the community a week ago, or less than a week ago. But we haven't necessarily had an onslaught of disagreement or feedback regarding it. But I think that partially that would, if it is going to come, it's going to come when people know who our potential bidders are.
But they're not going to know.
But they're not going to know.
Okay, so when we select, or if we select
At the CO
someone,
bids thing.
right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. I guess for me though, like if we were never intending to have an open discussion, like in your statement today, you said we'll bring more information and more discussion
As
if we were never discussing it, then why did we even make, it just seems a little bit wrong that we don't have an open discussion.
But I thought that's what tonight was. Like, how was tonight? I guess, and I'm not trying to. I totally am appreciating that there's probably a public perception that if we go to a vote in December, that we didn't put this important issue out there long enough. But I think what I'm struggling with is I thought tonight was Carrie read the statement and some of us had some comments. Like, we don't need to debate. What are we?
I don't think
what kinds of things will we say when we talk about it again? Besides what Jill Gretsch mentioned of maybe some additional kind of almost FAQ stuff about the process.
Well, I think that stuff is important, but I don't think it's about debate. But I think we're 7 representatives of this community. I think, like, I felt constrained in what I was supposed to or could say tonight. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't supposed to be a discussion. So, and that's the kind of the mantra that I.
Well,
it was
no,
a
I think
discussion.
it's like it's what you can or cannot say
Right.
that will jeopardize the sale.
And we have to do the best by the
So
district.
that's why
Of course,
I think there
of
was
course,
like
but
those.
when we spoke, it was like it's going to be a statement, not a lot of discussion. When we spoke, it was going to be a statement, not a lot of discussion. Frankly, if there was a discussion, I would have come out and said, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. Like, we have aging facilities that we've done a lot of great work to, but like in many cases, school districts have to take, and work very hard and go to referendum or put this work over the course of 20, 30 years. And this is an opportunity. So that would be my opinion as one of 7 board members. So I'm stating that publicly for constituents to understand where I'm coming from. And I imagine each of you are going to have a perspective as well. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's a little bit different. So for me, that's the missing piece. It just feels a little like, I get the closed session end of it, but it feels a little bit like we're just jumping into a very big decision very quick, throwing, and I'm giving optics here, not what I believe, but putting some things out there to check the box to say that we've done it, but not really allowing ourselves to be open for the amount of feedback that one might think would go along with a decision this way.
Well, I think that like if we can make a decision whether to go forward with the sale or not, and then if we did go forward with the sale, there's always opportunity where there would be something could be built in where we could possibly pull out, or the other parties could pull out, and or the zoning or the village would not do X, Y, or Z, or there could be something that happens with the park district, and so like there's always that, but I don't think that we can like plan for that. Like, we just have to make a decision whether or not we're going to go forward with it or not, and then there are going to be a number of hurdles where you can possibly say no, this isn't the right time or X. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong on that?
I don't think it's a matter of being wrong. I think you're right on everything that you said. I think it's a comfort level of feeling for each of us where we sit on what we feel is like I'll give an example from the spreadsheet. Somebody said something about, if you're going to do this, could you please incorporate green space or whatever they said, in the feedback. That's a worthy statement. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Maybe there are provisions that we can't do that. So that would be nice to be able to communicate that. That would be nice to be able to bring out some of those things and to communicate back out, to just let people know that we've heard them and, that we've considered it. I don't know.
But can't we let them know that we heard them when we have talk about it on the 19th and say, it was great, we got so many comments, these are things we took into account, and here we are. Because I think it's the best rollout we could have had with how the communication and everything forum for people. They don't need to come to the board meeting. It actually is it's more open to the community to respond with the way that it's set up than it would be if they had to come to the board meeting and talk. I mean, we're giving much more opportunity for people.
Is there an issue with the 19th? I think I asked this before, but December 19th, if we say, here's the T's and C's, the businesses being able to put a bid when, in essence, people are really off work from the 20th to possibly the 2nd of January.
I think,
Eris didn't think that was
Eris, you
did
talked
ask
about
that
that
to
last
Eris.
time, right?
I think this is such a unique opportunity that the community of potential bidders, they'll fly back from Acapulco or Vail or wherever they are to crunch the numbers and come up with a bid. And frankly, their trip should not be interrupted, because the bidding would be, if we stick with the January opening date. Let me go back to my notes from the last meeting. Hang on. I want to say the bid opening was like the 15th or the 16th. And these people are in the business of bidding on land like this, so they know what they can pay and what they can't pay. So I don't see that as a hindrance to the process, given sort of the sophistication of all the potential bidders out there.
And Michael, you raised a good point. A lot of things could happen, but I do think that once we start this, like, we can't pull the deal. Like, I don't think typically it wouldn't be written where, like, we can just decide in 6 months that we're going to change it. So I think there is kind of a firm start. It doesn't mean it'll actually close or transact, but maybe it makes sense for Eris just to remind.
Yeah, so there is
like
language,
the
right.
couple steps that we are trying to, like, find a date for, and, like, let us fill in the parts about how many times we want to talk about it publicly or a community forum or not. But, like, we need to do terms and conditions with you in closed session to set the baseline price, and then at some point there's in open session public vote to move forward with
Adapting.
X, or I don't know what the right words are. Like, is it just
Yeah,
two things
so
we
there's
need
a
to do?
resolution. The board will
Okay.
approve a resolution. Exhibit A to the resolution will be the terms and conditions. Exhibit B to the resolution will be the notice of sale. The notice of sale is what Brian Stashak will publish 3 times in a newspaper of general circulation. The terms and conditions will become the contract, assuming the board ultimately approves the highest bidder. But there's language in the. Let me read you the sentence so everyone is comfortable. But here's what it says: seller, and that's the Board of Education, may consider the bid price, future property tax revenues, and new property equalized assessed valuation likely to be generated by the development of the real estate, and any other factors within its sole discretion in evaluating and accepting or rejecting the highest bid. So we could have the bid opening, and let's say there was a sense among the board or the community was up in arms. At that meeting, whether it's January 23rd or sometime in February or March or whenever, the board could just reject the highest bid, and that's the end of it. But at that meeting, that's, if you accept the highest bid, then it's done. Then the approval period commences, the feasibility period commences, and they will begin interacting with the village of Willow Springs, and you guys will take a couple steps back and simply be waiting for that process to unfold.
So that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I was just going to
'Cause
say.
Then if we can reject the highest bid, we have that space where people can either come forward and talk if they'd like, and we have space that we have time, and we have time.
Wait,
Yeah.
rejecting the
that-
highest bid, how does that give us the space, you mean?
The space of that space of time, because we're actually not voting on the sale until we're voting now to
January
accept that
23rd.
higher bid, highest bid.
Yeah, but if we do reject it, we're done. Like, we're not doing any of this. Like, we're not going to the next bid, and we're not going to do this again in 3 months. Like, we won't have people show up, right? Like, but I totally get your point, Allison.
That's a real vote. That's the vote.
real vote.
That's
meaning,
the
December
the
19th is
meaningful.
terms and conditions,
It's
and I
getting
would
it going.
argue that, especially hearing that language, that is the exploration. Let's
That
see
is.
what the appetite is.
Right.
Let's
You're
do
just
that.
putting
We
it out
told everybody
officially.
we were doing it. We're going to see what it is. Let's continue the conversation, and then we'll see what happens.
Wow.
And then it's actually, we're actually voting. So we aren't like voting on this the minute we meet in end of December.
Can you walk me through that bid opening process one more time again? I know I've done it with some of our contracts that we've had. So is that something that's not done publicly? The open bids that
That
we
is
would get for?
public.
It would
Yeah.
be. So you do
Probably
have
in
it.
this room,
That's
just
all
like we
public.
do summer construction.
Okay.
Yep.
And anybody can come.
Yes.
And we don't televise. I can't remember, do we?
We haven't.
We've not.
No,
And we
it's
don't
fine.
have to.
And then, okay. And then I think you guys have come to us with your recommendations based on that session.
Yeah, it's the same process as essentially when we're bidding our projects. So
Right.
We record each bid, write
Yep.
it down, and then bring one
that's
bid
it.
to
Only
the
in this
board.
case
So
we'd be
then
going with the
that's-
highest price versus the lowest.
Right.
lowest.
And then the real discussion then happens around who those bidders are at that meeting on the 23rd? 23rd. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Eris confirmed this, but in theory, we'd be bringing one bid to the board.
We'd be bringing one bid, that's correct, yeah. So on the day of the sealed bid opening, let's say there are 5 bidders that show up, and the bids range from, 52 million to 61 million. Assuming these are all sort of capable, reputable bidders, the odds are that the highest bid, the 61 million, is going to be brought to the board for that meeting and for approval. Once the board approves it, then it's a firm contract. You cannot back out of it, and only they can choose to walk away if they do so during particular windows, the approval period, the feasibility period, things like that. But you're not bringing all the bids in. You're only looking at the highest bid, and that's what the statute contemplates. You're trying to achieve the highest price through this process.
But it would show us all of the bids. I mean,
We would bring you all the bids, yes, all of them,
but
right,
like
right.
we've done it in our packets. We see who everybody is.
And that's end of January,
January.
when we
23rd.
vote on the
Would be
highest
when we
bid.
would vote on the highest bid.
So I thought from previous discussions, I thought we weren't obligated to accept the highest bid, that we had the ability to accept not the highest bid if there were some reasons within the offer that made us feel better about that.
Eris, did you hear that question?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the language I just read you can consider the bid price, future property tax revenues, new property EAV that's generated, and any other factors. Now, the reality of the situation is, assuming all the bidders are industrial developers who do things like warehouses and logistics centers, you're sort of looking at very similar entities, and at that point, really the only difference is going to be who's the highest bidder, whether it's Bridge or Duke or First Industrial or some of the others. They all basically do the same thing and give you the same product too.
And we could foreseeably get developers of other types of developments other than industrial during this process too, correct?
You could, and I think the example I gave at the last meeting is, let's say, somebody comes up with the idea of the world's largest cannabis cultivation facility and they want to put it on this property. At that point, I think it would be well within the board's sound authority to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we want to do with this property. We're rejecting that bid, and we're going to go back to the next highest bidder and say, this is who the board wants to contract with. So,
But I think that's an important point, because even if it wasn't obvious from the get-go that a company like that was buying it, there has to be this assumed risk that it could go that route at any point. Like, whoever buys it could sell the property, or whoever buys it could put up something that the board is not aware of. And so I think that's something to
well, that's a good point too, Brian, because these kind of businesses, what they do is they build buildings and then generally lease them for long term. So the sign on the side of the warehouse, it may be built by Bridge, but the signage might be
Something
U.S.
that the board
Foods or
doesn't
something like that,
Ultimately.
And then, so they could, that will depend on more the village than anything else. The village may have very strict requirements where something like a cannabis distribution business could go. I'm assuming they do. So you're likely just to get, cold storage and warehousing and, distribution, logistics. I see it really as sort of the same thing that they're putting up where the Allstate campus is now being demolished, a very similar concept there. Or if UPS were to buy it. So let's say UPS was like, hey, we really want to expand what we have there. They would simply do more of what they're doing,
Hey, Eris.
But I think going into it eyes wide open is important because we just never know where it could go.
Exactly. No, you're right. I'm glad you made that point, Brian, because these folks they do the development, they get the approvals, they build the buildings, and then oftentimes they move on, either because they have a long-term tenant or they start selling parts of the project or all of the project.
Brian.
Hey, Eris, quick question for you. This is Brian. If the board decided not to take the highest bidder right in this process, is there any legal ramifications that highest bidder would have? Are there any legal opportunities for them to come back and say, hey, wait a minute, how come you're not taking us? We're the highest bidder. What are their avenues after that?
Well, I mean, this being America, you can sue for any reason or no reason at all. But I think the language that we have in the terms and conditions, where we look at specific factors like new property tax revenue, what the EAV generated by the development, and then this last phrase, any other factors within its sole discretion in evaluating and accepting or rejecting the highest bid. So you've got a ton of discretion here, and if for some reason the bidding process yielded a bidder that the board was like, boy, they're willing to pay $2 million more, but there's something we don't like about them, you could reject that. And then, I don't know that our language allows us to sort of keep the second highest bidder hanging out there. I might need to put a sentence or two in there to that effect. This really contemplates you're either going to accept or reject the highest bidder.
To me, that might be.
Let me think about that. Yeah.
No, I was just going to add that may be more of a PR answer than a legal answer, right? Like the board would want to have a really good answer to the community on why they accepted a bid that was not the highest amount, I would think.
Oh, I would agree.
Do we get to do any diligence on the potential buyers where, like, ability to pay or wherewithal to pay? Like, if you've got a publicly traded industrial REIT buying it, no problem. If you got some mom and pop shop that's just getting started and they're the highest bidder, like, aren't we at risk, like counterparty risk in their ability to fund? Like, could that be a reason, or shouldn't worry about that?
That's a possibility. We're asking for a $500,000 earnest money payment, so I think that's going to shake out a lot of the sort of financially weak operators.
Yeah.
And I can add a little phrase in there, though, Julie. I kind of like that. And the financial wherewithal to close on the transaction, something like that. That actually makes sense.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think of other ways, like other scenarios where the highest bidder wouldn't make sense. But if it's a crypto company who wants to build a crypto shop, which isn't, that's a stupid example, but there's I guess the depth of their experience might be relevant to me.
Sure.
So go ahead.
So, like in residential, you have a fair housing violation that you have for, denying someone. We don't have that risk or concern here in commercial, do we? Mm-hmm. Because how can we determine what has value or not, like with what we're purchasing, of what their intended use would be if it's all commercial space?
That gets back to more what is the village going to approve and what's a permitted use within whatever ultimate new zoning they wind up with.
Got it. Okay. Well, I felt good with that. Thanks for that explanation.
So I think for me the missing piece, well, there's a few, but one of them is back to if we get input or we're getting questions, and there's some things we know we can't talk about, but there might be simple answers that can be addressed in an FAQ, right? So maybe it's something like, you know, people asked us about, and I'm throwing this stuff out there random right now, but you know, we've been asked about how do we ensure that we can maintain some green space and the potential of the sale. You know, is the answer, you know, the district has no control over that. The district cannot blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? So I'm like, at least just putting out there that, back to the point, that if somebody has said something, that it's been heard, and that that there probably might be less control of some things that people think that we have control over.
Well, we could put it in the contract, but that we're not going to get as much money. Like, it's my initial reaction to some of those comments. Like, we can put that in the terms and conditions, say, oh, you need to have 10% of whatever you do maintain this green space, but we're not going to see the numbers we're talking about, would be my gut. But others are probably more experienced with this, like Eris. I don't know if you had.
Well, the village, though, is going to require that. Keep in mind that, you know, given that you have residential on the west and a school, the villages are going to require significant buffering, like landscaping, berms. So that's really a village issue. You know, they're not going to allow the site to just be built up with a slab of concrete and 3 million square feet of space. It's going to be, it's going to be landscaped. It's going to be buffered. There's going to be limits on the types of lights they can use, so you don't have light pollution spreading into the neighboring areas. Those are all village issues on how the property gets developed.
And these guys know that. They know where the property is. They know there are houses. They know there's a school.
Yes.
Like, they know. They know that that's just part and parcel of the deal.
That was one of the things that when we had the meeting with Bridge in May, they talked about that they bermed things up pretty significantly. They talked about a warehouse they had built next to a school in Fort Lauderdale, I think, in Florida, and like all the work that went into that. So yeah, that's part of what they do.
That's good. So I guess.
So are we ready to take that vote?
On which date?
On
Terms and conditions and
December.
setting the sale price. And then does that information, the terms and conditions don't get publicly displayed. I'm going back to think about what's publicly displayed.
Yeah.
They are at the
Yeah,
same time
everything's out
as the sale
there. Yes.
price, so that the buyers are, okay.
And the sale price meaning the minimum bid.
Right,
Okay.
right, the minimum bid, sorry.
So that would all, Eris weigh in here, but my guess is if the board was voting on that on the 19th, then we would publicize that in the packet on the 15th or 16th, like we normally do.
Yes, so you'd have a copy of the resolution. The resolution would attach the two exhibits, Exhibit A, terms and conditions, Exhibit B, notice of sale. So that would all be public information that people could look at, they could review, and it would be put in front of the board as an action item for the meeting on the 19th, yes.
Okay. And so people could come and make comment too at that meeting, okay?
Yeah, once,
19th.
So you're saying discuss on the 19th.
Oh, right,
but
right, before we have the highest bid revealed and all the good stuff, got it.
So
Yeah,
I'm comfy with the 19th.
I know, back to the 19th, I had to go full circle.
No,
We had to go through this, yeah.
Yeah, I think given what we're doing on
I
the
know.
19th and the
Yeah.
time between that and when we would be voting to accept a bid,
Makes sense.
makes it.
'Cause-
What's that, Michael?
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you weren't cutting me off.
No, I mean, I just think also to add that you still have time, or we still have time in that January window to, if we feel that there's a major need to have some kind of a special like meeting or something, or if
Right,
if
something
it becomes
crazy.
necessary, a forum in which we can share something broader, aside from what the potential uses could be. Because I don't know when, like, is it Willow Springs?
Yeah,
The
it
Village
is.
of Willow
It's Willow
Springs?
Springs.
Like they, like, you know, we don't even know where
They get
where they
involved.
where
Yeah.
where they are, or like, you know. And I guess it doesn't matter. Like, we're doing what we do, but then there are a lot of other things that we're being concerned about that, like as Eris is saying, that fall into another municipality's hands that I don't think just know like where we cut the cord
Right.
per se. I think that's where there's confusion.
I think so. I think,
like
yeah,
at least on my side about like where is our.
What's our role? What's their role? And then right.
But it's good that we're being concerned. I just don't know that.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's a little bit of like haziness about.
Right. Or we're being concerned about things that are out of our control. I guess my take.
Well, can I make a suggestion? Maybe you can add to the FAQ a section on what happens next. If the board were to approve the sale and a successful bidder materializes that's approved by the board, what happens next? So what happens next? They investigate, this new contract purchaser has to investigate the suitability of the site. They have to go through the Village of Willow Springs approval process. The school board has no input into the Village of Willow Springs approval process. It's a separate unit of local government. It's a municipality governed by the Illinois Municipal Code, and they have their own process. And maybe that's worth putting in the FAQ in anticipation of that question.
That clears it up a lot.
Good.
Yeah, we need that.
Right, because it gives the community more power back in terms of like input or
Yeah.
say about what their thoughts
Right.
too.
And where they can put that, where they can have
Right,
that,
and
that
where they can go
that commentary.
to
Right, exactly.
have that.
Eris, have you done any kind of? Have you ever put kind of that sort of scripted something like that together? Because
I could definitely do it. Yeah, I mean, I was just winging it there, but I'm happy.
Right.
I'm
No,
happy
it's very
to.
good.
Eris, say that again how you said it, so I want to take some notes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, what are the next steps after the board selects the highest bidder? And the next steps are that the contract purchaser will begin to engage with the Village of Willow Springs, because it's the Village of Willow Springs that controls the zoning process, what are permitted uses on the site, how densely it's going to be developed, what sort of buffering and landscaping are going to exist, where they're going to control like where the access points are for traffic and all that. So how the thing is developed is ultimately the village's determination.
So does the board feel like that's necessary to publicize before the 19th or before the 23rd or after the 23rd?
I would say after the 19th.
I think sooner the better. Then it gives
I-
people
I-
opportunities to
if
ask
we
My
have it,
questions.
question was
let's
going to be,
put it
why
out there.
not?
Like lay it all out. So
Like now?
So basically, almost like a timeline. It would say, board accept the terms and conditions adopted on the 19th. Then post for 3 consecutive weeks. Then bid opening.
Yeah.
Then approve a winning bid. Then the buyer would engage. Like lay that all out in a
Yeah.
I think that
almost
goes
like a
to our
potential timeline.
Yeah, I think
That's
that
what
goes
it
to our
is.
transparency,
Yeah. Right.
and then they have an opportunity to come before for the
Yes,
next meeting
yeah.
to ask those questions.
That's great.
And that's kind of what I thought a discussion would, when we talked today, a discussion would be
Right.
about, like the process, like what happens, what do we involve ourselves in and not, so that'd be
Right.
great.
But
Would-
we are able to just put it out there and we have it living
Perfect.
on the website.
So would that go on the website as soon as possible, or would it go right before the 19th?
I think it should go as soon as
I
possible.
think
So-
it should be up by the time the agenda
packet goes out.
Goes out.
Okay.
So like by
And
the
we could
end
get
of
it
this
up
week, if
this
not
week,
sooner.
and we could get-
Right.
I'm sure Donovan Group can help you
Yeah.
tweak or
Yep.
Mary
And
Lynn,
Eris
you know,
too,
and
yeah.
Yeah.
it's pretty
And I think if you put the word if in there, like, or somehow
If the board
condition
decides to
the
sell.
timeline, like subject to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so people understand the process a little bit more.
Yeah.
Give them that information.
Eris, can you throw me put some language on I'll start a new
Google.
page of the Google Doc that says something to the effect of, follow up from tonight's meeting,
Put it on the land.
and throw some
Program.
language on there about what you were just talking about.
I will do that,
And I'll
yes.
have a conversation with Jerry tomorrow.
And then
and
we all have
talking
access
through.
to that.
Right.
Okay.
But don't we have to set the price?
Yes, tonight we were going to talk about that for terms and conditions. Thank you, Michael.
Is there any other communicate, like Carrie mentioned the video,
Is
like
there a recommendation?
anything else communication-wise
Oh,
that the
sorry.
board feels
No, I
like,
guess the
No.
video, I think back to your point, I know.
like the feedback from the Donovan group
There's no
late
reason.
this afternoon was,
hard-
it's
it's
been
hard
so
to
quiet
force.
that let it go.
Let it lie.
There's a
Let it
different-
lie.
Yeah, there's different
And that's
reasons.
what I like.
Like
think-
I know.
it's one person
Yeah.
talked, like there's so they said I'll confirm that tomorrow with Jerry too, but let it go.
Yeah.
And what are the T's and, what are the terms and conditions that we need to?
In a
I
nutshell.
feel, isn't that like it'll become part of the contract, and I feel like we need to we have it in our inbox from, I think, 4 or 5 months ago, if that's right, but are we really in a position to approve that quite yet? Or maybe I just don't remember what was even in it, but I think Eric circulated it, or someone did.
No,
Yeah, it went
it's
out
pretty
October
standard.
11th. The document is dated October 11th.
Right.
Eris, is it really just the price? Is there any other decisions the board has to make on the actual terms and conditions, or is it just price?
Yeah, it's really price, because the terms and conditions I would describe as very friendly to a buyer, because they give the buyer a lot of opportunity to investigate the property, determine its, feasibility for the intended use, and then they get 210 days to get all their village approvals, plus the opportunity to extend that for another 90 days. So you're talking about, a significant opportunity to go through the process. And that's essentially taking risk out of the process for a prospective buyer. And the less risk there is, the more they'd be willing to bid to acquire the property. And then what the minimum bid is,
I just want to recap quickly to what we discussed here. We are not, we're moving forward with the vote on terms and conditions and the sale price on the 19th of December. And, excuse me, we will update the website with a next steps of what will, kind of what the next few phases will be. Yeah, the process. And that will be live this week. So everybody kind of just be on alert for that communication coming.
Will you send it out an email to make sure that it's live, or it will just be there and it'll appear
It'll
one
just
day?
be on the website.
Got it.
Yeah. We'll
Will
just
there
post
be-
it.
No, I meant like to the public.
To the community, yeah.
No,
Just mean, you don't give updates. It's just
It'll
there.
just be, well, that's up to the board. Like, the feedback from Donovan Group was, don't send an email.
I'm good with that.
Just
No,
update
No, I'm
the
good with
website.
that.
but
Okay, I just want to make sure
We
we
can do
were all
whatever.
Well, the terms and conditions, I know we talked about original, or a month ago, or whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, of putting something in there of some wording about, we'd like you to consider talking to the park district.
Eris, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I can weigh on it. I mean, that's certainly something we could add. I think Julie had made the point earlier that any additional bells and whistles are just potentially going to scare away folks, with that's really a Willow Springs issue. I could easily see the village saying to a contract purchaser, as a condition of the rezoning, you need to, trade a portion of your property with the park district, so the parkland, and frankly, that would be a better buffer for the neighborhood too. So it sort of makes sense for everybody. I guess I would recommend not putting that in there and let that be a village issue.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my prediction. What's going to happen here is the school district is going to be left out. The park district will sell this in a heartbeat. If we continue with the sale, the park district will put their place up for sale, and then Pleasantdale School District will be out. That's what will happen.
We'll be out, maybe.
So they'll be left when the music stops. They'll be left without any property and no ability to build, and they know that.
I mean, they had an option B.
Yeah. Yeah, their option A was to build on the current, or on the southwest corner after a land swap. Their option B was to build on the current park district, and their option C was maybe to build on their existing middle school, which isn't, so they'll probably just scrap their plans.
Got it.
Who needs early childhood education?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what happened. That's what happened. Unfortunately.
If we went.
Kidding, Michael's
if
ready to
went,
pass out.
then it
Like,
won't.
just
But
kidding.
If it went
It's from
residential.
exhaustion.
It's like 11:15. I can't handle it.
amount of kids coming into our program will not be that dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a whole other board discussion, to be honest, because I don't know that it would impact us, but that might be something the board would want to say. That would have a tremendous impact on Pleasantdale.
Yeah.
Because now you're talking,
Yeah.
I think the general feeling is it's 120 homes or so. That could
Okay.
be, yeah.
But this is,
It would also
we
be a
would
much
know
less
that
price.
because it's like Bridge versus
Yes. Yep.
McMahon Builders or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
And at 55 million, we're probably not entertaining those kinds of people.
Right. Yeah,
And
no,
it-
no residential developer is going to pay that much money for a property that size. Because they're just not going to get they're not going to get the return out of it.
And just one last thing too on terms and conditions. I thought Julie, and my brain's getting mush now, but I think Julie, did you mention something that Eris wanted to add to the terms and conditions?
But just something
Yeah,
about
let me
the
go through my
financial-
notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's what I'll put in there. I'm going to add a sentence just to give us additional wiggle room, and I don't know what it's going to say, but to the effect that the board, retains authority to go back to the next highest bidder if it rejects the highest bidder. That doesn't sound good, but that's the concept. In terms of what are the factors that the board can look at in rejecting the highest bidder would be sort of a financial wherewithal to, consummate the transaction, track record of completing successful projects, set the minimum bid, change that to $55 million, and then I'm going to work on language about next steps for the FAQ.
Thank
So,
you. That's a great recap. You guys good? Everybody's gonna fall asleep. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We comfy with 55.
All right, should we let Eris go?
Well,
Seems to
yeah,
be part
we'll
of
want to
this
do
motion.
motion to go back into.
Can we motion then to go out of to adjourn closed session so that we can go back into open session?
So moved.
Should I open the door?
have a good evening, folks. I'm going to drop off.
Wait,
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Good
Eric.
night.
Who's
Thanks,
seconded?
Eris.
Yeah, bye now. Yep.
Jill first, Jill
And that was
McGee, Jill
11:20?
G.
Okay. And
Now
now,
the doors
hold
are
on, let me
open.
stop this.